Chris Mellon published an article in The Hill on March 6th titled, "How Government Overclassification May Hide UFO Videos and Harm Our Security." According to Mellon, there has been a move by the DoD to classify all photos and videos related to UAP, such as the 3 UFO gun camera videos we are all so familiar with. One of the reasons this effort is so disturbing is that the DoD isn't even claiming retroactively that the gimbal, Go Fast, or Fleur 1 videos themselves are or ever should have been classified, or that their release has damaged national security. So this move to classify this kind of data seems to provide no practical benefits and leads to missed opportunities of unfathomable proportions. Here is what Mellon had to say in the article regarding the pragmatism of ensuring this kind of data is not unnecessarily classified. I am approaching the UAP topic as a member of 2 serious groups of scientific researchers, the Galileo Project and the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, SCU. Both of these UAP research organizations have gathered able groups of scientists who are seeking to advance our collective understanding of UAP anomalies. Those efforts now appear to be hindered by new guidance that moves the classification yardsticks merely because some U.S. government officials dislike oversight and are uncomfortable sharing information. Later he writes, "As an example of the damage which excessive classification can do, let me offer a specific example. An effort is underway using machine learning to train a powerful computing capability to detect valid UAP videos and photos and to reject fakes or videos that mistakenly capture conventional aircraft. Training the system requires valid, authenticated UAP video. The more, the better. Suddenly, the source of the best, most authoritative UAP videos has been eliminated by this inappropriate but all too commonplace bureaucratic decision to withhold taxpayer-funded information from the taxpayer." Now, this is really rich. It seems pretty clear at this point that the US government has been lying about UAP for decades. And then suddenly, when the United States Congress starts to get really interested in wanting to get to the bottom of it, and the scientific community begins to look through the telescope, now the US government is like, yeah, we've lied to you about UAP for decades, and that's what we did. And oh, by the way, we don't want to give you any videos that could help facilitate your understanding of this mysterious phenomena because we just don't want to do it. Even though it's pretty clear that these videos would not harm national security whatsoever, in the same way that the 3 UFO gun camera videos that were released, that we're so well aware of, also didn't harm national security. The bottom line is UAP may represent non-human intelligence. This would be potentially the greatest discovery in human history, and the government doesn't want to throw a bone to the scientific community, even after decades of obfuscation and lies? In the following clip, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Chris Mellon, was asked on the Hill.com YouTube channel, what are the chances that these UAP that we're seeing are from our own military or maybe from private industry technology that's working covertly alongside our own military, or that it's foreign adversaries' technology versus non-human technology? And this is what he had to say.
Well, it's very interesting. The report submitted by the Director of National Intelligence said we see no evidence that it's from a foreign government. None of the instances, the 144 incidents they identified, could be explained by U.S. classified research programs. So that leaves you wondering then what hypothesis best fits the facts. And frankly, the alien hypothesis fits the facts better than the alternatives. I'm afraid I have to say that.
I agree with Chris Mellon's assessment here. And I think as the disclosure process continues to ensue, that assessment will become more universal. And so it would be really nice if the bureaucrats within the US government would recognize that they'll look a lot better if they make an effort to be perceived as part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. Now, In this article, Mellon expresses that the "we don't want to share with the public" mindset could have resulted in classifying the Sputnik launch in 1957. And yet, the American people becoming aware of that launch and the fact that the Soviets had a major technological breakthrough in space led the public to demand the actions that ultimately produced the incredibly successful U.S. space program. If we were to look at Apollo 11 alone, which was the first manned mission to the moon, and subsequent efforts in space travel, what you'll quickly learn is that these extraordinary scientific endeavors didn't end up being about space alone, but indelibly changed our lives here on Earth as well. Here are 10 notable inventions that are the result of the US space program. Camera phones, athletic shoes, CAT scans, artificial limbs, laptops, computer mouse, better tires, water filtration, solar cells, as well as insulin pump. When I think about the potential myriad inventions, breakthroughs, innovations that would have happened over the past couple decades, had the world been informed about this presence, I get very somber and concerned. And of course, that contributes to me wanting this to stop because it's madness. I think the US government has had high fidelity data on UAP no later than the 60s. Now, some people think there have been crashes of UAP and retrievals, and that may be the case. But being hyper-conservative, I think the United States government knew in the 60s, and they decided to keep that concealed and insulated from the rest of humanity and the American people. Now, this brings me to Dr. Gary Nolan of Stanford University. Just as a quick bio, he's basically a biologist that studies human cells, and I'm going to read a little bit about his background. He has published over 300 research articles and is the holder of 40 U.S. patents and has been honored as one of the top 20 inventors at Stanford University. The following clip is taken from an interview with Mara Eldouini, and it's a fantastic interview. I'll link to that interview in the description below. And in this clip, Dr. Gary Nolan talks about a device that he's trying to create in his lab called an atomic imaging scope. And he relates the usage of it for understanding very anomalous metamaterials with very strange isotopic ratios that potentially come from UAP.
And so, when you're talking about, let's say, an intelligence that is, let's again speculate, an intelligence that might be millions of years ahead of us, it has knowledge of how to manipulate the material world in ways that we don't. So the best we can hope is to emulate, and the best we can hope is to take it apart. Now, how would you do that? One of the instruments that we're building or trying to build in my lab is an atomic imaging scope, right? Something which actually sees the position of every atom. As it turns out, there's actually no instrument available today that does that. There are things called cryo-electron microscopy, which can maybe get close. Electron microscopy doesn't do it. There's crystallography, but crystallography requires things to be crystals, and so amorphous materials that have atoms more or less randomly placed, let's say, are not readable by this. So my position has been that if you want to understand some of these materials, you need the atomic position. You need an atomic atlas of what these things are.
Nolan goes on to explain that at the same time he's developing this technology to examine exotic materials that may stem from UAP, his primary interest in developing this technology is for his biological research. He says that inevitably we are going to have to know the position of every atom in a cell to truly understand it. And that's because form equals function. And perhaps if we understand the form, we can intuit the function. Now, do you know what happened 32 years, 6 months, and 3 days ago from the day that I'm filming this? Well, of course, that was December 3rd, 1989, the very day the Cold War came to an end. And I can understand why the U.S. government wouldn't want to throw on the table the reality, at least hypothetically, since I can't prove it, but I believe it's true. I understand why they would not want to throw on the table the reality that there are aliens in our airspace, when there's a very strong chance that a nuclear exchange could occur. But once that started to peter out, that was the golden opportunity to level with humanity, level with the American people. And this atomic imaging scope that Dr. Gary Nolan speaks of might have been something that would have been invented years ago had the government not postponed disclosure or UFO confirmation for such a long period of time. Now, right now, it does appear we're in the disclosure process. But imagine if this would have happened 30 years ago. Imagine the motivation that our great institutions would have to understand this mystery. Imagine the technologies that would have been invented just to study this phenomenon. That alone could have created all kinds of breakthroughs and innovations that would have raised the quality of life on this earth. So this is really getting to the heart, at least to some extent, of why I'm so disturbed about a policy of secrecy on a discovery this enormous that could have such a sweeping, wide spectrum impact upon humanity. And this goes to the thumbnail of this video, which is that truth is freedom. And sometimes the truth is freedom to reach our full potential. The truth sets you free, but it also, I would argue, is conducive to you reaching your full potential. You know, when you don't have a complete map of reality, how are you going to reach your full potential by definition?
You always look at what's possible, and once you know something's possible, it's actually almost inevitable that you will create it. I mean, that's just the way humans are. I mean, that's just the power of desire and the power of creativity that drives humans to the next step. It's kind of being aware of what your neighbor can do, and you want to do it too.
A lot of inevitabilities have been delayed, in my opinion, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there are social inevitabilities that will be triggered by UFO confirmation that have also been unjustifiably delayed. I think that once this gets proven, that this will create a new renaissance for innovation and expanding the minds and perception of all human beings on Earth, something that should never have been delayed any more than it had to be.
Because, I mean, now the people who think we shouldn't be talking about it have been now proven wrong because the government has come out and said this stuff is real. I mean, this is a historic event to have the U.S. government come out and openly say these things are real. We don't know what they are, but they're real. I mean, to me, I've had now a number of my science colleagues, my mainstream colleagues, including some that said, Gary, you shouldn't be doing this, write me emails and say, Gary, it looks like you might have been right. This is interesting. So minds are changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Now, Dr. Gary Nolan is 1,000% correct here, despite how I perceive some of the skeptics will spin what's occurred over the past 4 years. The U.S. government has admitted that UAP are real, they are a genuine mystery, And some of them appear to have technological capabilities beyond known technology. And if you know about the elaborate sensor capabilities of like a carrier strike group, and you know about how relentless these UAP incursions have been, then that's a big deal. There is no country on this earth that has a bigger budget for developing military hardware than the United States, and it doesn't even come close. And then you have pilots and radars who are just telling you explicitly that what was encountered is of unknown origin and unknown technology. Now, the US government has come out and said this is real, but we are not to the place yet of UFO confirmation that I defined in my previous video. But I anticipate that's going to happen at some point. And that's when the paradigm shift will really ensue. On March 6th, Lou Elizondo tweeted out the article written by Chris Mellon that we discussed earlier, titled, "How Government Overclassification May Hide UFO Videos and Harm Our Security." Music and Truth responds by first citing a quote from that article. "But soon, if DOD gets its way, you may not be able to watch them, thanks to a move to classify all such videos and other materials relating to UFOs." And then he responds to that quote, "Well, that sounds like the opposite of what you said yesterday was looking likely. Thought we were looking at more, not less," referring to videos getting released. I think the following clip that I'm going to play from Joe Murgia's very recent interview with Elizondo is the clip that Music and Truth is referring to.
And by the way, let me just tell you before we get into some questions here. 2 days ago was a historic day. And Joe, you're the first person that's going to know this publicly. It's happening right now in your podcast. I am very pleased to announce that there was a significant, and I can't overstate significant, milestone achieved about a day and a half ago. Without going into a lot of detail, it may come out public, it may not. But I think the NIM Aviation, the National Intelligence Manager for Aviation under the Director of National Intelligence, a two-star general, needs to be significantly applauded. There was some significant effort in that I think is certainly in the interest of the United States and the American people that just occurred. And so I want to do a real quick shout out and a huge sincere thank you to the wonderful folks at the DNI and the NIM Aviation, the general, for outstanding work. Thank you for doing what you did and keeping the American people, the focus of your job. This never in the history of the topic of UAPs have we got to this milestone, and that was just achieved. And by the way, I think it's a step in the right direction for transparency. I think the result of what just happened will result in a trickling down of information to the public where it belongs. So when people say, "Oh, I want to see another video," or "I want to see," a significant step was taken a couple of days ago towards that direction. So I just want to say, congratulations to the folks, men and women at the DNI and everybody else who's been working so hard and tirelessly on this and has been taking this topic seriously. And a big congratulations to our NIM Aviation, the general. So thank you very much for doing what you did.
Notice that Elizondo said that a significant step was taken for transparency, that information will trickle down. And he implicated that new videos may get released that would allow us, the public, to take a look at them. So I think this is the portion of Joe Murgia's interview that Music and Truth was referencing. And to put this all in context, let me give you the reply tweet to Music and Truth from Lou Elizondo himself. "Great point. However, there are elements that are now trying to do the right thing while others remain obstinate. The pockets of resistance is what Chris' article is focused on. He's calling them out. Also, this article was drafted before DNI's latest action." The following clip from Joe Murgia's excellent interview with Lou Elizondo goes into depth on where we are right now in terms of the U.S. government's involvement with UAP and even the sheer frequency of anomalous aerial vehicles doing incursions into restricted military airspace.
2019, Lou, can you clarify either evidence you're aware of your opinion? And I know there are limitations with drones, which you've described, but specifically July of 2019, where Jeremy Corbell released videos, people are saying, those are drones, and everything I've heard from sources are like,
guys, honestly, Joe, it doesn't matter because stuff is happening every week. Right. I mean, that's so yesterday. I mean, okay. we can spend time talking about it if you want.
No, that's fine.
But I'm telling you right now, there's information coming in almost on a daily basis from very sophisticated sensor systems. And it is very compelling. We're not talking about blips on a radar. We're not talking about fuzzy pictures. Clear, compelling photos. That comes in a lot. And again, the intelligence community is that flow of information, that spigot is finally flowing. The water coming out of that spigot is finally flowing to where it needs to go. We can dissect that incident just like we can dissect the Nimitz and the Roosevelt and the Kid and the Omaha and the Boxer and yada. It goes on and on and on and on and on. I think what's important that people really may not be aware of. People say, well, I want to see the video. Okay, well, we got it. We're working on it. That hopefully will happen. But what's more important than you seeing a video is the fact that the people who need to see those videos are now beginning to see those videos. And they're working their way up to some very senior people in our government, and even the lawmakers are being now made aware of it. So it's working. The construct that we spent the last 4 years trying to help create is finally coming to fruition. And by the way, I can't take credit for it because it's been a lot of people involved in this effort, but it is happening and it's beginning to work very well.
As noted earlier, things have changed since Chris Mellon wrote this article. Nevertheless, this was his introduction when he tweeted it out on March 6th. The administration should be embarrassed by recent efforts to classify anything related to UAP. This is legally dubious, undermines civil-military collaboration, and contradicts DNI Haynes' complaints about widespread overclassification. Well, folks, I think 2022 may be one heck of a year as it pertains to UAP transparency. Let's enjoy this ride together, shall we? Which brings me to the request that you subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You become a patron, you become a YouTube member, or you could even just give me a one-time donation. All of those links are in the description below, or you could just slap a like on this bad boy, and I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.